Yeah, now we have a rough cut here. I've done the basic rail lines, and now it's really to shape the final part of the board. But before I do that, I've decided to go ahead and put in the sandwich in the bottom, to have that, because you will see that way it's easier to do the rail lines, the bottom rail lines, when you have the sandwich in. And for the sandwich, I have actually used scrap material that I found. So what I've done is I've taken all the small pieces and I actually glue them together. This is Divinycell, which is, as you see, the H20. I've used that before on most of my boards, and it works pretty well. It's a 3mm thick, so it's very dense. Lately in my last board I actually used Arex, the green Arex, and it actually is easier to use. It's a 2mm, but it's also extremely dense. But it's easier to use, especially you can understand the difficulties is when you're gonna go over these shapes with something hard, and to get that. But we'll come to that later on. So today I'm gonna put on the sandwich, and to do that I'll use 160 fiberglass in between, and do that in a vacuum bag. So let's go ahead. So now I traced out the actual shape of the board on my glued part here, and now as I just make a final cut here, just a little bit outside the markings, just to get it a little bit easier for the vacuum bagging. One thing that I've started using now is a layout table for putting on the epoxy. And the way I do it, I have just 2 pieces of plywood here. I have one basic plastic cover, and then I put on a very thin plastic on top of this, and I'll show you the reason for this in a while. Then I lay out the glass. And this is 162 grams per square meter. It's a little bit thicker, but on the bottom I'm using 162 grams, a 3mm, and then a 200 gram carbon on top of that. So that should be strong enough. And now one tip that I usually do is I lay out I know the shape, and I do a little tracing. And you might think, why in hell are you doing that? Well, then I know exactly where I really need to get the epoxy onto the cloth. I don't need to worry about out here. So here we have now what needs to be fixed with epoxy. So let's go. Well, let's mix up the epoxy. I'm using just a normal little plastic jar with a stir. To put it on later on, I will use my trusty squeegee. And to measure this, I have a weight inside a plastic bag, not to get any epoxy on top of it. And for the epoxy, I'm using Epodex Clear Eco Hardener. I'm not sponsored by them, but I've been using this one lately, and I really like them. A little bit slow on the hardening, but as I said before, I'm not in a hurry. And it's a 2-to-1 mixture. And for this one, I probably mix up 200, something like that. We'll see. Now, one thing that's important when it comes to epoxy, and it's the stirring. I try to do it in 3 minutes, so I'll come back after 3 minutes. Now we mix this up for 3 minutes. So let's put, the good thing with this is it's fairly cold outside, and this one, it doesn't react as fast as some of them. So I have plenty of time. I don't have to worry about that. Now comes the tricky part, how to get this onto the board. Well, we'll see what we can do. Trusty roller. And we start rolling it up. As you understand now, I have it on the wrong side of the plastic, so that makes it a little bit tricky, and we'll make it. Now the good thing is, since I made those two markings, I can put that one easy onto the board then. Slowly. No hurry. Just roll it out slowly. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. Now, what I usually do is I cut it while I still have the plastic on. Since this is going to be just along the line, so I mean there's just... Now comes the fun part, the peeling. It is not easy. I should be careful. It's like peeling off the plastic of a new television or a computer or something like that. Just go slowly. By doing it on a table like this, you ensure that you get just enough epoxy. Because if you put the cloth on the board and start putting on the epoxy, you will notice that the board, the core, will suck up a lot of epoxy. So you will use much more epoxy than what you need. Now just slowly make sure that there are no creases or that it's lying perfectly on top of this. You don't have to push it down, just make sure that there are no creases. I like to watch this Australian guy who makes surfboards. And the funny thing is that he always says, what is his name? It's Peter's man boards. They always say perfect when you make something. And I like that. Proud of yourself, of the work you do. There we go. Those small bubbles that you can see, it doesn't affect. It will be pushed down by the vacuum. Now comes the tricky part again. Now we put on the sure that we have it enough coverage all over the place, not missing anything. Perfect. There we go. That's it. Now time for vacuum. I found some scrap tubing that I had at home. So I have the tube, and this is another tube that I just cut. I can put it on top. So it's what you do is you just get this straight. This put it on top. Roll it up a bit. Every time I do this, I tell myself I should adjust the bag because it's a very big bag, but I never do it. So, my mistake. I have a small suction vacuum pump here, and what I need to do now is, this is all homemade with a special pressure gauge and my own vent that we close now. Connection. And then we start sucking. Now this is going to take some time. Making sure that it hasn't moved. Everything looks okay. Perfect, perfect. This one doesn't need to be very strong. I think I put it around 3 bars. That should be enough. If you put it too much, you might deform the block. It won't take too much. It has happened when you get a distorted or imploded block. You go too hard. Now we're slowly getting there. It's good pressure now. Now we measured this board before. It was 2.1 kilo. Now we will weigh it afterwards as well, just to make sure that we can calculate the volume when we continue shaping.